Yo soy libre de pensar, porque siento que es la hora de ganar la libertad. Hasta cuando ya de abusos es el tiempo de cambiar, porque basta de miseria, voy a decir que no.
Porque nace el arco iris después de la tempestad, porque quiero que florezcan mis maneras de pensar, porque sin la dictadura la alegría va a llegar, porque pienso en el futuro, voy a decir que no. Vamos a decir que no,
Con la fuerza de mi voz,
vamos a decir que no, yo lo canto sin temor, vamos a decir que no,
todos juntos a triunfar.
vamos a decir que no, por la vida y por la paz.
Terminemos con la muerte, es la oportunidad.
Hello everybody and welcome to Micronesia. Today the Marco Polo is in the Republic of Palau. Now we have spent a lot of time in Polynesia and Melanesia, but this is our first and our only visit to Micronesia. Palau is an archipelago made up of about 200 islands. It's situated in the southwestern corner of the North Pacific Ocean. Right now we're at about 6 degrees above the equator. And this is the first time the Marco Polo has been in the Northern Hemisphere since 1987. Now today we are going to look around these islands. We're going to take the Zodiac and drive around and see what we can see. Henrik Kofel, Eduardo, Sandra, Mark and Greg will try to discover the beauties of Palau above and below the sea. We hope you enjoy our program.
Leaving our anchorage near the main city of Koror, within minutes we are exploring a myriad of small islands, some shaped like mushrooms or candy gumdrops. It is amazing that so much vegetation can grow on these jagged limestone pinnacles. Due to their inhospitable nature, many of the islands are inhabited only by crabs and various seabirds. We see herons and gulls, parrots, terns, and a long-tailed white tropic bird. As we continue, we wonder if the undersea world can contain an equivalent amount of beauty.
Here we are around some of the rock islands. Now we know that the people from Palau have been explorers for many, many years, but they explored these islands for fish, for things that they could eat. We've heard there's a lot of marine life here. We've seen some snorkeling and now we're going to see some diving. We know that there are many sharks here. We know that there are stingrays. What else have we heard about?
Manta rays, eels, snappers, groupers, a lot of very colorful fish.
And lots of corals as well. Now, these islands were formed centuries, millions of centuries ago, when volcanoes, which had coral reefs already on top of them, were uplifted. And they were uplifted because of the shifting oceanic plates. Now, after these volcanoes were lifted out of the water, the coral that was on top of them was exposed to the sun and the air and gradually died out, creating these limestone islands. And often they look like mushrooms. Eduardo, what is it that cuts them the way we see them cut?
Yeah, these cuts that produce the kind of shape of a mushroom.
This undercutting.
The undercut is produced by the action of animals, sea animals like crabs, sponges, and other kinds. That their action decompose, break down the rock at that position. So this is how this cut is produced. Also, the caves and the tunnels that we can see in most of these islands is produced by the action of tannic acid. Tannic acid is being produced by the action of the decaying vegetation. The vegetation that is on top of the island decays and this produces this acid that dissolves the lime soft stone. So this is how it is produced.
Also, the wave action helps to eat out some of this rock underneath at the water level. Now we know that the Palau Trench is about 9,000 meters deep, which is pretty deep. We're not diving in that deep water today, but not too far out there, it drops off to 2,000 feet, or about 600, 700 meters. Now, we're going to dive today in probably 30, 40, maybe 50 feet of water. So we're going to go down now and see what we can see.
Okay,
You ready?
ready.
Hair on?
Yes. Have a nice dive.
The locals call this dive spot Blue Corners. We're at the outer edge of the reef where the vertical wall drops straight down to the ocean floor. There is an abundance of marine life here due to the nutrient-rich waters, fed by the swift-changing currents. The coral fish feed off of the microorganisms in the coral, while the bigger fish gather to eat the smaller ones. We see playful clownfish, butterfly fish, Moorish idols, Napoleon fish, and green parrotfish. There are streamlined barracuda and gray reef sharks slicing effortlessly through the water. Schools of snapper shifting their course in unison like clouds blown in the wind. We play in the caves and tunnels that cut through the wall. Where the current is strong, we drift weightlessly, as if floating on some magic carpet. Gravity is different here, so to know which way to go, we follow the air bubbles or look for the light. We are enveloped by the sea and moved by its mysteries. colorfully graphic visit into the undersea world leaves us in awe of the beauty and diversity of life below the sea. It is a rare opportunity to live as the fish in a purely liquid environment. Now, to learn more about one of Palau's special underwater residents, we visit a giant clam hatchery to observe the production of this unique food source.
Here we are today in Koror, in the main city of Palau, and we're with Jerry Hesslinger now, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what they do here. And what do you do here, Jerry?
Well, I'm the manager of the MMDC, the Micronesian Mariculture Demonstration Center. What we're doing here is farming giant clams. This is a hatchery behind us. In front of us is a land-based nursery where we produce the baby clams. And behind us is an ocean farm, the largest in the world, where we have tens of thousands of baby giant clams. The purpose, of course, is to produce these things for food. They're good to eat, they're valuable, and they're also declining because they have been over-harvested throughout the Pacific.
And how were the clams used in Palau? Are they a food source, or what do they do with them?
Well, people have been living in Palau for about 2,000 years, and during that whole period, they have been using the clams for food and using the shells for a number of things, including pounders, or adzes, and as a source of lime for betel nut and for rain catchment and so forth.
How did this whole project get started?
We have been working on this for about 10 years now, and we got into it initially as a conservation project. When we succeeded in mass culturing the clams, we decided to turn it into a business, and that's what we're doing now.
And now, who is benefited by this business?
Nearly all of the islands in the Pacific have received baby giant clams from the MMDC. We've exported to about 17 different countries. We have also released tens of thousands of baby clams on the reefs of Palau, and we donate larger clams. In fact, right now we're in the process of donating 15 tons of clams that we produced here to the states of Palau for conservation.
So there are a lot of baby clams from here turning into giant clams somewhere else.
That's exactly right. In fact, many of the baby clams that we sent out 4 or 5 years ago are now mature and are being used in hatcheries just like this one to produce more baby clams. So what we've achieved is a degree of sustainability and self-sufficiency.
What can you tell us, Jerry, about the clams themselves?
Probably the most interesting thing is that they derive their nutrition from sunlight. They live in symbiotic association with algae, microscopic algal cells. These algal cells are living in the mantle, the colorful part of the clam, and they use sunlight, just like the leaves of the trees, to photosynthesize and produce food for the clams. So we're not feeding these clams. The algae are doing that for us.
So you just give them water?
That's right. They need clean seawater and sunlight, and of course they need protection from predators. But beyond those basic inputs, we don't need to provide food. And this is one of the major incentives for farming giant clams. It's the only farm animal in the world that can produce its own food.
Well, that's a very inexpensive animal to raise, I guess.
That's right, and I think that's why we're seeing a proliferation of giant clam hatcheries and farms around the Pacific now.
Now, if people do eat the clams, what do they eat? We notice you have several different kinds of clams here. Do they eat all of the meat? What do they eat?
Well, within the family of giant clams, there are 7 different species. All 7 are edible. We have produced all 7 here at the MMDC. And islanders are fond of eating the colorful part of the clam, which is called the mantle, and also the muscle, also the gills, the gonads. Virtually the whole part of the clam is edible.
You have 7 kinds. How many do you have right here? How many clams?
Let's say the big ones are all one species. Then, let's see, this one right there with the mottled mantle is that one. That's a second species. There's the third. There's a fourth. So we get 4 right here.
How old will these grow to? How many years old will they be?
Decades.
Decades.
Yeah. Nobody knows for sure how old these are because they're wild, collected from the outer reef. But we do know that all of the clams are capable of living for decades, and that the largest species, Tridacnogygos, can live for more than 100 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an important lesson for fishermen and for islanders with respect to conservation. When you harvest a large giant clam, it's very much analogous to cutting down a big tree in a forest, and it will take decades to replace.
We wished Jerry luck with his work and left the hatchery. Then we went diving in the waters of the ocean farm beside the project to observe firsthand the life of the giant clam.
Hello everybody, welcome. Today we are in Yaoshuo. Yaoshuo is a very beautiful town, a small town, where here live many people from the country. Also, there is a very nice market. People here are very friendly and very curious, as you can see. Today we are going to meet these people, we are going to talk with some of them, and I hope you enjoy this stay with us here in Yaoshuo.